In this video I'm going to review the Sadowsky UV70 bass. Hey guys, I'm Tyler, thank you for tuning into the channel once again. If you're new around here, don't forget to hit that like button and to hit the subscribe button and notification bell to keep up to date with the latest of the videos from my channel. So in this video I'm going to be reviewing and demoing the Sadowsky UV70 jazz bass. I've had this bass for a lot of years actually. This is the bass that's oldest in my collection and it's stuck around for a reason. So I'm going to fully demo this bass. When I was doing the tone demo, I realised just how many sounds you can get from what's really quite a simple tone setup. So I'm going to go through the specs of the bass, then go through the tones on the bass, and then give you my conclusions on the bass as a whole. So let's start off with the specs. The bass here has an alder body, it has a maple neck, it has a Murado fingerboard, which is another name for Pal Ferro. It has two Sadowsky hum cancelling pickups. It has the active electronic circuit from Sadowsky, which is volume, pickup, blend, tone, which is the VTC, the vintage tone control, which is also a pull to passive switch. And then the classic Sadowsky bass boost, which is a broadband boost at 40 Hz. And the treble, which is a broadband boost at 4K. One other thing to note about the pickups is that the pickup is placed in the 70s position, so that's why it's a UV70 bass, is that back pickup is slightly further back like it was on 70s Fenders, which gives you a little bit more growl and a little bit less warmth in the mid-range, more bite and cut. In terms of the hardware, we have this Sadowsky quick release bridge, so you just have to loosen the strings and you can unhook them from the bridge quickly for quick string changeovers in the case of an emergency. We have these Sadowsky tuners, which are slightly older and heavier. The Japanese basses now have the hip shot tuners instead, and I believe that's the same on the new Warwick builds as well. There's also binding on this instrument, which is rare on the Sadowsky. They only came on the Japanese models, so you had the binding and the block inlays to give that classic 70s look. The bass is a traditional 34-inch scale like you'd expect from most Fenders, and also 20 frets as well. So it's a real vintage flavoured instrument. The body is also a bit bigger because it's a UV. It has more of a traditional Fender Jazz size body, whereas other Sadowsky jazz basses have a slightly smaller jazz bass body. One other thing to mention is that the truss rod is adjusted from the wheel here down at the base of the neck, which I always love. It's a great feature and makes life really easy. Just pop something in there and turn to get your truss rod adjustment. When it comes to the neck profile on this bass, it is more like a 70s U-shaped jazz bass profile, but it's definitely not a big profile. It's bigger than some jazz basses I've played, but it's just really incredibly comfortable. It's a good size down at the bottom. It's definitely a jazz bass, not a P. And then as you come up, it doesn't really thicken out too much, but it does a little bit, just to give a little bit more solidity and feel the hand a little bit more when you're playing up around the 12th fret. But it's nothing obscene, it's nothing too big. I personally find this to be one of the basses that I can always just go back to and pick up and really play whatever I want to on it, because it's comfortable enough. I don't like tiny necks. It's not tiny, but it's kind of the perfect balance of very playable, very easy to pick up, whilst not being completely thin and too snappy sounding in the overall tone. So those are the features and specs of the bass. I'm going to quickly just plug in and run through the electronics and give you some of the ideas that I use when I'm playing this Sadowsky bass. Now I'm plugged in and running through my Aguilar DB751. This is set to pre-EQ, so none of the EQ settings on the Aguilar you will be hearing. It will just be the bass itself. I'm just going to play the bass a little bit soloed and then talk through some of the settings that I use on this bass to get a really wide range of tones. This is set flat with no bass boost or cut and the tone all the way up. Both pickups. This is now the bridge pickup. And then the front pickup with those same settings. I always think that this bass has so much deep sub low end on that front pickup. It really works for just a fat, almost kind of sine wave synthy type sound, better than pretty much any bass that I know. I think the active electronics really help buffer that low end, and you just get this really deep, smooth fatness on that front pickup, which isn't like a P bass really. It's much smoother and rounder, but I do like having that option on this bass. I've now switched the bass to my preferred and go-to setting when I play most Sadowskis, and that is to have volume all the way up, then the pickup selector move just back off the middle notch, so it's slightly towards the back pickup, but only just. Then I roll the vintage tone control slightly back to about 80%, and then bass boost sits around 10 to 20%, and the same for the treble. I never boost this preamp too heavily because it can just go absolutely crazy. So this is that tone. That's got a little bit more mid-range for me from that bridge pickup, and it's still got the warmth and subbiness of that front pickup as well. As I mentioned earlier, the boost is just crazy on this bass, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of an example of the kind of range you get from that. So this is the bass boost. That's only on about 50%, and it's already pretty much shaking the room, so I don't want to go any further than that because I just think I don't think you can, I've never had an instance where I needed to use that much bass boost on this bass. And then this is the treble control. As you can hear there, that just adds a little bit of brightness to the sound. Enough that you cut through, but nothing that really gets in the way with anything else. It's still fairly low in the mid-range. It's just starting to get into that high mid. And that's kind of where you want it to sit in the mix. You're going to hear the texture of the bass, but not have too much clank and just noise that you don't need. The virtual tone control is an incredibly useful piece of the electronics here, and I think that's what gives this bass the real versatility, because it allows you to almost sculpt that EQ position, because rather than just boosting one frequency like most active basses do, you can boost that frequency but then also take off some top end. And because it's a broadband boost on the Sadowsky bass, it doesn't just boost 4K, it boosts all the frequencies around it. So in that way, by rolling off the tone but also boosting the treble on this bass, for example, you can boost other frequencies around that area, but maybe not necessarily that very top end. So it's not just at that 4K. So here's an example of that. The treble's on full here, and that's tone all the way up. And I'm just going to slowly roll the tone off. There the bass is more present in that upper mid-range of the bass without having all that super brightness that you might not necessarily want. That also means that when you are rolling off the tone, if you roll off the tone but then boost a lot of the bottom bass, you can get an absolutely massive sound from these basses, and really cool vintage sounds but with extra bottom end rather than the kind of dark mid-range that typically happens from something like a P bass with flat ones when you roll off the tone. There's also the option to run this bass passively, but personally I prefer to just have the bass in active mode and use the tone control as it is. I use the passive as really a backup just in case the battery goes or something like that, and it's one of the things that makes Sadowski so giggable to me, because you don't have to worry about electronics failing. If something like that does happen on the gig, you can just pull up the passive knob and you can still play, and that for me makes this a really professional bass for pro players to do work with. Now we'll head to the back-to-back section of this video demoing all the different tones. Let me know what you think of this bass so far in the comments below, and also let me know which was your favourite tone from the demo. I've tried to keep it concise as possible whilst also showing you the full range of tones you can get from this bass, but there are so many and so many places you can have that tone control and how it interacts with the EQ that I couldn't do all of them. So I've tried to show as many as possible whilst not making this video super long and too bloated, but hopefully it gives you an idea of just the crazy number of things you can do with this bass and the ways it can fit in. So that was the tone demo. Let me know your favourite tone in the comments below, and hit the like button if that tone demo was helpful to you too. At this point I'm just going to give you a little bit of a conclusion and let you know who I think this bass is best suited to. I can't be entirely unbiased with this bass because I've had it for such a long time and it's always kept its place for one reason or another. This is my default jazz bass and the jazz bass that I always go to for anything that I think needs that jazz bass type tone instead of something else. Being a jazz bass, I think it's pretty much the most versatile bass you can get in terms of it will fit for any genre and do a good job. And I think the fact that it has the Sadowsky electronics means that you can make it a super modern sounding jazz bass, or you can roll off the tone and tweak it so that it does sound like much more of a vintage Fender type bass. The thing that I love about it is it's always got that little bit more power and a little bit more energy to it from the electronics, as well as that passive tone. And I think that's the killer thing for me about the Sadowsky electronics package, is the combination of that tone control and the active boosts mean that you're not stuck with just a boost at one frequency or another. It's a more dynamic EQ that you can shape and have a bit of boost but also a cut in a different way. And the fact that tone controls are interactive and their frequencies shift and change as you turn them, I think makes this the best active package that you can get. I know that's not the same for everybody, and a lot of people would prefer to have a mid-range control, but for me, I just want to be able to add a little bit of boost, a little bit of broad boost that's simple, and then if I need to really EQ something drastically, which typically I don't, but if I need to, I can go to the amp and just use the EQ controls on that. I personally found that this bass can just do everything. So whether you want to play slap style stuff in a typical 70s style, you have the Murado fingerboard, which is a bit brighter than Rosewood, and you have the 70s pickup spacing and that active EQ to boost the top and the bottom. It gives that classic Marcus Miller type slap sound. I don't slap a lot, but you know, if you're doing functions or you're doing any of those covers gigs, having that option there is just great. If you want to have a really big fat fingerstyle tone, you can do that and add as much bass as you like to boost it. And you can also, you know, switch to the front pickup, roll off the tone, have that massive super subby tone as well. The build quality on this bass is just right up there with anything else in the Fender style build. Obviously it's still a bolt-on bass, but the way it's done is beautifully done. It's one of the old Japanese ones. Obviously Sadowsky have changed to Warwick now, building their basses, but I wouldn't expect that to really change anything, particularly at this same Metroline level. Overall, I think this bass is just the bass I have that doesn't do anything badly, and if I needed to turn up to an unknown gig, I would turn up with this or my Sadowsky PJ5 because it just gives me options for everything. If they want old school and vintage, I can do it. If they want bright and modern, I can do it. The thing that holds this one bass back for me and means it doesn't get used all the time is not having the fifth string. But does that mean this bass isn't great for 99% of situations? No. This bass is just a great bass, and I think if you want a jazz bass that can do it all from modern to old school, I'd check out a Sadowsky UV, whether it's a UV60s or UV70s. They are just great old school sounding basses with modern flair. Obviously they don't make this bass anymore, it's made in Japan, this one, but if you want a bass that is gonna be able to do pro work without being ridiculously expensive but still having the same quality as a super high-end bass, I just can't recommend the Sadowsky Metroline enough. As I said earlier in this video, this is the one bass that I've kept since I was 14, and it just has that sound, it has the feel and the playability. It's everything you could possibly want from a jazz bass, in my opinion. So that's my review and demo of the Sadowsky UV70 bass. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you own one of these? Have you played one of these? And what are your thoughts on the new Warwick Sadowsky basses? Let me know all of that in the comments below. Don't forget to head over to Instagram. I will leave that linked below me now to check out more stuff over there. If this video was helpful for you, don't forget to hit the like button and also to hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and make sure that you stay up to date with my latest videos. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.